Welcome everyone to the Speaking Part 7 Expressing Opinions analysis. Before we begin, I want to let you know that I will be following the Speaking Part 7 Expressing Opinions Tips and Strategies guide. We can find this guide in our CELPIP library. In the speaking section, go to Part 7 and you can find that video in the library and you can watch that video. That video will give you a more detailed analysis of the guide and about how you can use it effectively to answer Speaking Part 7. And if you want more information about those tips and strategies, then please watch that video. For now, I will only be reviewing the pages of the guide. The guide tells you about understanding the question and how to prepare effectively. Okay. And some question notes. This is part 7, which is very important for CLB 7 to 9 or higher. Okay. And very important. We're going to be using a lot of modals to express our opinions and ideas. Okay. And what I will be trying to show the most is how we can structure our answer. Okay. Level 7s or higher, 7, 8, and definitely 9 or higher. We need to provide a very well-structured answer. And that's what we're going to try to build. And for that, I will be using this structure found in our guide. Now, let's get started with today's analysis. Okay, everyone, let's look at today's Part 7 Expressing Opinions question. Do you agree that the government should impose a ban on people's use of plastics? Explain your reasons. Impose a ban. Okay, that means not allow, restrict, prohibit, pass some laws. Okay. This type of question is the most common in part 7. Do you agree that? Do you think that? Okay. And usually the topic is something like this. It's common in daily life. I mean, it's happening in many countries around the world. And it's happening here in Canada, where the government is passing some laws to ban the use of plastics. For example, at the grocery stores and supermarkets, no plastic bags. And in many fast food restaurants, or any kind of place that gives some convenience stores, plastic straws not allowed anymore. Okay. And while some people agree with that, many people disagree with that and they don't like it. And so the question is a common topic like this, or something that's happening in regular society, and also something that could be controversial that people agree and people disagree with. So, for that reason, I think it's very important when we answer this question to agree and disagree. For higher levels, it really shows your knowledge more because you have ideas about why it's good and why it's good. And again, we can't answer this question completely with our opinion, so it's good to give different points of view, okay? And that's the kind of answer that, well, at level 9 or higher, they should provide that kind of answer to get a higher score. It's not only about giving ideas and opinions for both sides. No, you can get a very good score with only giving an agree answer or a disagree answer, okay? But it's really better to speak for 1.5 minutes also. Speaking about both sides or giving ideas about both sides gives you more to speak about, okay? And that's the kind of answer that I'm going to try to build here, okay? Now, for that, we are going to be using our guide, and it's very important to organize your response. Very important. Maybe this is one of the most important parts for higher levels. Higher levels will start the question well, they will organize their ideas, they will sequence their ideas, and they will close their answer well. So we're going to just practice that, and we're going to use this as a guide, okay? So we're going to start by introducing the question, okay? So, from my point of view, for some reasons, I agree that the government should prohibit the use of plastics, but for other reasons, I disagree. Okay, so we're just introducing the question directly, and we're saying for some reasons I agree, for other reasons I disagree. Okay, and we want to be clear about the topic. Part 7 is, again, it's not really about vocabulary, but for higher levels, 9 or higher, it is, okay? We should provide strong vocabulary or a wide range of vocabulary. But it's more important, I will say this in the end, about everything together, okay? So we introduced the question, so now let's go over to our first idea or our first side. Probably agree. Okay. First and most importantly, I agree because our world has been experiencing many difficult environmental issues related to the use of plastics. Okay, so this is true. There are many issues around the world because of people using plastics, leaving garbage, for example. So we can see here, just I'm introducing the idea. Very general. It says has been experiencing means we have been having from the past until now. So again, that's one good example of our grammar use, stronger grammar use already. We're using modals over here, and here present perfect continuous. That's very good use already. And of course, vocabulary, difficult environmental issues, the use of plastics. Okay, so now what I want to do now is I want to give some examples of those issues because it's not very clear which issues are there. So I'm going to give some examples of that, such as the oceans being polluted with plastic materials and many species of animals being harmed by eating plastics. Well, we've seen many videos about that, right? And yes, so here I used such as, which is a good connector to give examples, but you can also say, for example, the oceans are being polluted with plastic materials and many species of animals are being harmed by eating plastics. So when we use such as, we can say this, such as the oceans being polluted. We don't have to say such as the oceans are being polluted. But if we use for example, we have to say, for example, the oceans are being, because it's a full sentence structure. Okay? So we can see here that we gave our idea about environmental issues related to the use of plastics, and we gave some examples. So that's very good. And now let's move on to our second point. We have here another point for agreeing. Additionally, since most plastics aren't very biodegradable, they take years to decompose, and this causes waste buildup and land degradation. So, I hope we know that this is a big issue with plastics, right? And the main issue is that they are not biodegradable or they are not made of organic materials. And for that reason, they take a lot of years to decompose. And the problem here is that this causes waste buildup, so much garbage everywhere. Lots of reports about that. And eventually, when it gets underground, it causes land degradation, which is makes the land go bad, okay? So, little bit difficult vocabulary here, or stronger, more academic vocabulary, I would say. But I think this idea is well known, okay? And also, level sevens or higher, we need to understand these ideas. Maybe you won't speak them directly, but we can understand them. So that's what we're learning, okay? So I said here about the issue of plastics not being easy to decompose. And now I'm just going to summarize. I don't need to explain. Let's keep in mind that we are given an idea, we're given an example, and maybe explaining a little bit, but we can't over explain. We don't have all day to speak. We have to speak in a minute and a half. Let's keep that in mind. So I just gave another idea, and now I'm going to just close this paragraph by suggesting how it's related to the topic. Therefore, banning plastics would surely minimize its negative ecological footprint. Okay, so again, the topic is banning plastics, and we're saying here that this would reduce its negative ecological footprint, what it has. We're using possessive here. Now, when we say negative ecological footprint, like the carbon footprint, our carbon footprint, a footprint means what you caused or what is left behind. That's a really good use. Actually, that's like a more academic expression. So this means would surely minimize the amount of negative, the amount of environmental damage that it causes, okay? That's what that means, okay? So then everyone, now we have here two good ideas that we said why we agree. And now we are going to get to some ideas why we disagree. Notice again, we're not explaining so much. That's because we need to move on. Okay? We're going to have to speak this answer in a minute and a half. So let's get to the reasons why I disagree. Okay? On the other hand, I disagree because plastics are just one of the many materials which damage the environment. So I'm bringing here the idea that plastics, while there are many other chemicals, waste, and other dangerous raw materials, maybe, that cause more, saying here that they damage the environment, okay? Now, as you can see, I need to explain that, maybe give examples. Oh, I'm using in fact here. In fact. In fact is a very strong phrase. In fact. Or for example, or we can say in fact just to say stronger. In fact, they may not be as hazardous as some chemicals and other raw materials which are utilized, such as nuclear waste. So I'm giving the example of nuclear waste here. As we know, that is very damaging to the environment. Specifically, we don't even know where exactly to bury it after its use. We don't know what to do with nuclear waste. That's how damaging it is. So then we're saying here, we give that example. There you go. There are many hazardous materials, and nuclear waste is one good example of it. Okay, so what's next here? So now we're going to give another idea for disagreeing. Also, the amount of plastic that most consumers use is not as significant as that of commercial and industrial sectors, which is true. The commercial and industrial sectors, they use a lot more plastics, plastic equipment, materials, raw materials. We know that. So, this is what I'm saying here, that consumers or people like you and I, we don't use as much plastic as them. So, what does that mean? Well, I'm explaining here. So, perhaps the government should be restricting the plastic consumption of major corporations to implement drastic environmental changes. So, what does it mean? It means that I disagree because of plastics are one of many hazardous materials. And secondly, because plastic, I said here, it's people don't use, or domestic use, which is people's use, we could say that here, is not as significant as commercial and industrial sectors. So then maybe the government should be restricting plastic use there. Okay. So I've given my ideas here now why I disagree. Again, notice that I'm not over explaining. We want to just say some ideas about the topic. We want to give a few examples and we want to connect to the topic and why I disagree. I said the government should not be banning people's use of plastics, maybe another direction. Okay. So I'm not over explaining. I know that we want to explain lots, but we have to keep in mind that we need to speak for a minute and a half, not for 1 hour. So then, now let's get to our closing. All right, so let's see our closing here. We have to go back to the topic. Overall, I strongly believe that banning people's plastic use could be beneficial as an ecological initiative. So I'm saying that it could be beneficial. Okay, so that's true. And that's the one side where I agreed. It could be beneficial. Okay, could help. I said because plastic is causing so much, well, it's one part that causes a lot of environmental problems. I said that here, but I also disagreed, so I need to say that here. Let's see. But at the same time, I think it's just the tip of the iceberg, since this could be falsely blaming regular citizens and plastics as the main cause of environmental damage. Okay, very interesting here. First note that we're connecting with, but at the same time, okay? And we're saying, I think it's just the tip of the iceberg. Okay, good expression. Good expression. Higher levels, we should know some good expressions that we can use in our speaking and writing, but particularly in our speaking. Like this example, the tip of the iceberg. Plastics and its environmental damage is just one small part of the big problem, right? That's what the tip of the iceberg means, a small part of the big problem. And so I said banning people's plastic use is the tip of the iceberg. Why? Well, falsely blaming regular citizens. So that's one thing. So it's saying you and I, people are the cause of environmental damage, but it's not just people. As I said in the example, the commercial and industrial sectors, they use way more plastics than people, just like they produce way more pollution. And so that's one. And also, I said plastics. Plastics, what about nuclear waste? What about oil production? Okay. And how it's contaminating rivers and land and all that. So, again, that's what it means, the tip of the iceberg. it's falsely blaming people, regular citizens, and plastics as the main cause of environmental damage when it's such a much more complicated problem. Okay? So then, everyone, we summarized here, and here we have our total answer. Okay. Now, of course, we need to speak this in 1 minute and a half. Okay. Before I do that, I want to talk about the answer. I think that this answer seems to be very strong. I think it's not even for level 9, maybe 10, 11, who knows. But I wouldn't say it's like, actually, I wouldn't even say it's 11 or 12 in its quality. Don't forget that when we are checking for speaking, it's not just your ideas, right? The factors which influence your score are ideas, vocabulary. That's one part, one part. And in this case, for sure, I feel that there's still stronger ideas and stronger vocabulary that you could use. Okay? And then also, we have to keep in mind that when you're answering this question in a real exam situation, obviously you can't come up with the strongest vocabulary or ideas. Okay, so that's why it's only 25% of your grade. In terms of sentence construction and grammar, I think that this answer also, it's not so strong. 9, 10. Now, notice that we are using a lot of modals. Could be blaming, could be beneficial, may not be, should be restricting. And I see here has been experiencing. Also, this example, are being polluted or being polluted. That's passive voice. Passive voice is very strong to use in your speaking and writing. So if you can do that, that's good. Here's another example of passive voice. Are utilized. Okay. So I do see here strong grammatical use, but I don't see so strong. I see more grammar use that we can all do, basically, is what I'm saying. Okay. And that it's usually used. Okay, so that's in terms of its sentence structure, it's very strong. It uses some really good sentence structure, like over here. That is one sentence, right? Such as, with using such as there. And also I see some real here at the end, but at the same time, very good sentence structure since, okay, since this could be falsely blaming. So I do think that the sentence structure is strong, but again, not so strong. So in terms of its providing a complete response, for sure. And the last part is about fluency and speech. That's the part that I feel fluency in speech and providing a complete response, that's 50% of the grade. Because yes, it is speaking. It's not about sentence structure or grammar so much as it is giving a full answer in a minute and a half. So for fluency in speech, it's all about flow. It's all about intonation. So while I am rereading this answer, I'm going to try to provide the clearest and most native way of saying this answer. You want to do it almost like a presentation, okay? Because part 7 is the part that can give you the strongest or highest score. So we should do it like we're doing a presentation or a speech. And so while you were listening to me speak this answer in a minute and a half, let's make sure that you focus on my intonation and fluctuation of speech because it will be very important. Okay? Okay, so let's remember that this was part 7, expressing opinions. And the question was, do you agree that the government should impose a ban on people's use of plastics? Explain your reasons. So, also, while I am repeating this answer, please follow along and focus on the structure, how I introduce, how I sequence. Okay, this is important. And also keep in mind that I am providing a two-sided opinion. I agree and disagree. Again, I find that this is stronger for higher levels. And if you can do that, and if you can do that well, it shows your knowledge. And it should be higher level, okay? And of course, um, please focus on fluctuation in my speech and grammar, okay? All right. From my point of view, for some reasons, I agree that the government should prohibit the use of plastics, but for other reasons, I disagree. First and most importantly, I agree because our world has been experiencing many difficult environmental issues related to the use of plastics, such as the oceans being polluted with plastic materials and many species of animals being harmed by eating plastics. Additionally, since most plastics aren't very biodegradable, they take years to decompose, and this causes waste buildup and land degradation. Therefore, banning plastics would surely minimize its negative ecological footprint. On the other hand, I disagree because plastics are just one of the many materials which damage the environment. In fact, they may not be as hazardous as some chemicals and other raw materials which are utilized, such as nuclear waste. Also, the amount of plastic that most consumers use is not as significant as that of commercial and industrial sectors. So perhaps the government should be restricting the plastic consumption of major corporations to implement drastic environmental changes. Overall, I strongly believe that banning people's plastic use could be beneficial as an ecological initiative. But at the same time, I think it's just the tip of the iceberg, since this could be falsely blaming regular citizens and plastics as the main cause of environmental damage. Okay, everyone, I did it. I did it in a minute and a half to illustrate to you how it can be done. And I was able to speak it well, but I felt a little bit rushed. I hope it was clear. And even though I think this answer is great and well structured, I do find it to be a little bit long. And while if you can do this kind of answer, that's great for you. But I think that some parts here are not necessary and we shouldn't feel rushed. Fluency doesn't mean speed talking. No, it means speaking with continuously with good flow. So I'm going to reduce this answer here, and I think I'm going to reduce it. I definitely like the ending here. I think that's important. I feel that we don't need to explain anymore here. We can just give the reasons why we disagree. And maybe also, we don't really need another idea here. I think those examples are clear. So let's shorten it there. I mean, it's still a very good quality answer that's well structured. I'm just giving you another option for speaking it without rushing, okay? So let me speak this one here and let's see how long it takes me, okay? Okay, here I go. From my point of view, for some reasons, I agree that the government should prohibit the use of plastics, but for other reasons, I disagree. First and most importantly, I agree because our world has been experiencing many difficult environmental issues related to the use of plastics, such as the oceans being polluted with plastic materials and many species of animals being harmed by eating plastics. Therefore, banning plastics would surely minimize its negative ecological footprint. On the other hand, I disagree because plastics are just one of the many materials which damage the environment. In fact, they may not be as hazardous as some chemicals and other raw materials utilized, such as nuclear waste. Also, the amount of plastic that most consumers use is not as significant as that of commercial and industrial sectors. Overall, I strongly believe that banning people's plastic use could be beneficial as an ecological initiative. But at the same time, I think it's just the tip of the iceberg, since this could be falsely blaming regular citizens and plastics as the main cause of environmental damage. Okay, so I did speak that in less time and I was going a bit slower. So, again, I think both answers were good answers. This one is just as good as the other one. Because, again, like I've said to you earlier, the most important part is not giving so many ideas, using the highest level of vocabulary and giving the highest level of ideas. No, that's not what speaking is about. Speaking is about providing a complete answer with good ideas, good grammar use. Well, I would say about grammar, actually, it's more about not making simple errors in grammar and making sentence structure errors. That's very important. It's not really even about using high level grammar structures. It's about a complete response with good flow. So, everyone, again, this was an example. Both answers were just as good. Okay, and I timed those for you. And let's remember that for you to practice, you should try to practice building these kinds of answers. And you should try to practice speaking them in a minute and a half. Okay, that will really improve your fluency. Okay, so I will be putting up more examples of part 7, which is the most difficult. So keep on checking the channel to see which ones I put up. I usually will be posting or uploading several during the week. So everyone, let's remember that practice makes perfect. I would like to remind you that if you're looking for some more listening, reading, writing, or speaking CELPIP exam practice, then you should definitely subscribe to our CELPIP library. The CELPIP library has hundreds of examples of listening, reading, writing, and speaking, which will help you develop your score, whatever the score you need. Also, the library contains vocabulary, listening skills, reading skills, grammar, and writing skills exercises, which will really help you improve your general understanding of English and also for the exam. So, and you can purchase a 1 month pass or a 2 month or a 3 month subscription for a very low price. And of course, if you really enjoyed this content, then please like this video, share it, and also subscribe to our YouTube channel. That way we will keep on producing more CELPIP analysis for your development. Have a great day.